Can you guys hear me? Everything's good? Yeah? Okay, great. All right, so thank you all so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here today. Like they mentioned, my name is Hannah Rothwell. I am an American English teacher. I've been living in Uzbekistan for about 4 years now, and I feel like I've had kind of an unconventional life story. So when Nazira asked me to come and give a talk with you guys today, she asked me to give something that was motivational and something from my own life experience. And I figured, well, I think so many people hear about how they have to plan out their life, how they have to have a 5-year plan, how they have to know what their job will be, how they have to know what university they're going to so that they can be successful. And I never did any of that, but I still feel like I've had a happy and successful life. So I wanted to share with you guys a little bit about my journey, my philosophy, and why I adamantly refuse to plan out my life. All right, so first, I want to address the adults in the room. So those of us who are over 18, I want you to think, back when you were, let's say, 14, what job did you want to have? What job did you want? Pilot? Okay, a pilot, yeah. Dentist, yeah. Anyone else? Footballer, president, right? Okay, raise your hand if you have the job that you wanted when you were 14. Okay, exactly. So my point is that we change and we grow and we develop, and our interests change and grow and develop. When I think back to who I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I mean even 2 years ago, my interests, my passions, my likes, my fears, they were very different than they are today. And so when people tell me you need to have a 5-year plan, I think back to who I was 5 years ago. And I'm like, I don't trust that person to plan out life for me today. So I first want to give you a little bit of insight to who that person was. So let's introduce 18-year-old Hannah. So this is 18-year-old Hannah. This is me when I first started off as a university student. And I had no idea what I wanted to study or what job I wanted to do. So I applied for a university that was kind of close to my house, to a university that had a very beautiful campus, that had a lot of nice little shops and restaurants around, to a place that I felt I would feel comfortable living for the next 4 years. And when I was there, I discovered there were a lot of new things that I had the opportunity to explore that I never would have been aware of before I started university. So for example, I started taking an economics class just because I needed to take some classes. It's university after all. And I started taking that class and I realized I actually really liked it. If you asked me when I was 17, do you want to study economics? I would say, no, that sounds so boring. But once I actually started taking the class, I started interacting with the professors and I saw economics in a different light. It wasn't just about money and supply and demand. It was about how can you understand and connect to people who have a very different situation and a very different material reality than you do. And so I realized, oh, I actually really like economics. So after that, I started to get very interested in this, and I started to get the attention of my professors. So my professors started to invite me to things like their research, things like their conferences, projects that they were working on. And I thought, you know what, this is really cool. I still don't know what I want to be, but I know that I really like economics. Maybe I'll be an economist. But there was another thing I was also interested in. So at the time, I was studying Arabic language as well. Again, I studied it just because I was required to take a language, and I didn't know what to take. So I thought, okay, I guess I'll take Arabic. Why not? And then I started it, and I realized, hey, this is actually really interesting. And again, I started to get the attention of my professors. I started to learn more and more. And by the time I graduated, my Arabic professor actually got me my first job offer. So my Arabic professor found a former colleague of hers in Jordan who was the director of a private school. And that private school was looking for Americans to come and teach English. And I was looking for a way to travel. I don't know, I just wanted to travel. And my Arabic professor wanted me to go and practice my language skills. So she offered me this job opportunity. And because I didn't know what I wanted to do, I said yes. And then that takes us to 23-year-old Hannah. 23-year-old Hannah was very adventurous. 23-year-old Hannah loved traveling. She would go everywhere, and she loved being active. She hated sitting still. She hated being bored. So I would take every opportunity that I could to go hiking, to meet with friends, to travel to other places as well. And it was so much fun, and I learned so much. And again, I only had the opportunity to do that because I didn't have a solid plan for what I was going to do after I graduated. This opportunity from my teacher kind of fell into my lap. And once I took that opportunity, it led to more and more interests that I didn't know that I had. So fast forward a little bit, and then we have 25-year-old Hannah. 25-year-old Hannah is an actual teacher now. 23-year-old Hannah was not really a teacher. She was just traveling. But teaching was a way to work. And then I got an opportunity to come be an English teaching assistant here in Uzbekistan. And once I got that opportunity, that's when I realized, wait, you know what? I don't just like traveling. I don't just like international people. I actually like teaching as well. And so that's when I became focused. 23-year-old Hannah was all about fun and adventure and travel. 25-year-old Hannah was more focused. I was doing my master's degree. I was doing a TESOL certificate. I was doing a lot of professional development, and I was really trying to build my skills as a young professional. Now, if I think back to 18-year-old Hannah, and I told her that I was going to be a teacher in Uzbekistan, she would not believe that at all, right? But that's what happens when you say yes to opportunities and you don't hold yourself to a very rigid plan. Now, we are at 28-year-old Hannah. 28-year-old Hannah, that's me. 28-year-old Hannah is still fun. 28-year-old Hannah still loves people and is still pretty extroverted. But 28-year-old Hannah is maybe a little bit less adventurous than 23-year-old Hannah was, right? We settled down a little bit. Now one of my favorite hobbies is relaxing and watching TV at home, right? So we change and we grow and we develop, and it's okay to give yourself permission to do those things. If I think back to 23-year-old Hannah and I let her plan out my life, it would be go, 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 nonstop things, and it would be fun and it would be exhausting. So I've changed and I've developed, and I've also developed a love of coffee, as you can see in my wonderful picture, right? But that's the point. It's okay to grow. It's okay to develop. It's okay to change. You don't need to stick to a rigid plan that was developed by a previous version of you. So now I want to share a little bit more about why I don't plan my life. Because I think I have a kind of unique philosophy when it comes to not planning my life. And I want to share that with you guys today. So why I don't plan my life. First off, like I said, we grow, we change, we develop. And it's okay to do those things. Another thing, I don't like the word plan. And there's a reason why. When we talk about a plan, we talk about succeeding or failing. Plan gives us two options. It doesn't really allow for nuance. It doesn't really allow for discovery and growth and change. And I think that life is full of those things. So I don't really like the word plan because it forces us to think I either succeeded or I failed. And I think that life is more complicated than just those two categories. It doesn't account for also the unforeseen opportunities that we have and all of the extra things that happen that you never could have predicted when you started your journey. And then lastly, there are sometimes things that happen that are just beyond your control. And in order to give a little bit more context for this, I want to introduce you to 15-year-old Hannah. 15-year-old Hannah was actually different. 15-year-old Hannah loved plans. She would plan everything. She researched everything she could. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She knew which university she was going to go to. She knew the exact GPA she needed to get into that university. She had everything planned to a T. But there was something else that happened to 15-year-old Hannah. Through no fault of her own and no fault of anyone else's, 15-year-old Hannah became very sick. 15-year-old Hannah was diagnosed with a condition called dysautonomia. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. It's a long, complicated condition. Not everyone is familiar with it. But basically, all the things your body just does, like your heart rate, your blood pressure, sleeping, breathing, my body just didn't do them as well. So after I became very sick, it was hard for me to study. It was hard for me to go to class. And it was hard for me to live up to the plan that I made in my head. And after doing that, I realized that the plan that I made, the plan that I loved, it didn't fit the life that I was living anymore. The doctors at that point gave me about a 50% chance that I would be able to live a normal life again. And thankfully, here we are. I am the 50% that did succeed, right? So happy for that. But the point is, it's really hard to plan your life when you have that level of uncertainty. So that's when I decided, you know what? I'm done with plans. Life can change. Things can happen to you that you never expected. Sometimes they can be really difficult, but they will always allow you an opportunity to grow and develop and to change. So that's why I developed my strategy of not planning my life. So now I want to go a little bit more into that strategy and that philosophy and how you can maybe apply it in your own lives. So first I want to talk about what it is, but I also want to talk about what it isn't as well. So in terms of what it is, this philosophy is about the freedom to be flexible, the freedom to change, the freedom to develop. It's about permission to grow, to not be stuck in the version of yourself that you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's about reshaping the dialogue around life. We're not thinking in terms of success and failure. We're thinking in terms of growth, development, and opportunity. But I also need to highlight what it's not, because a lot of people are going to go home and say, Mrs. Hannah says I don't have to plan anything. And then you're going to be very lazy, and I'm not saying that at all. If anything, this philosophy is sometimes more work. It's not about being passive. You do have to be active. You have to investigate different opportunities. You have to reflect critically about the things that you want in your life and things that you value as well. You need to organize yourself, right? When I was applying to jobs, I had Excel spreadsheets that said when I applied, when people reached out to me, all of these different things. I was very organized, even though I didn't plan my entire life, yeah? And it's not at all permission to be lazy. You still have to take accountability for your own life. You still have to take accountability for your own decisions. So now let's get into practice. How do you not plan your life? So there are a few steps that I want to get into. So first, you need to articulate your personal goals. So when I say articulate your personal goals, a lot of people might say that sounds a lot like a plan. It's a little bit different than a plan. What I'm saying here is you need to articulate your values. And I don't want you to think in terms of job statements. Don't say, my goal is to become a businessman and become rich. First off, it's boring. Second, it doesn't really allow for a lot of nuance. Instead, think about why do you want that? So maybe you could say, for example, my personal goal is to make enough money so that I can buy a house for my parents. Because they've taken care of me, I value my family, and I want to give back to them. That gives us a good starting point. We're not focused on the job title of businessman. We're focused on a personal goal and then how we can achieve it from there. Another thing you need to do is think ahead. I kind of got a little bit messed up, but it's okay. You need to think ahead. But when I say think ahead, I recommend thinking one step ahead. And when I say one step, typically I'm referring to 1 year ahead, because there are a lot of opportunities that you need to apply for. If any of you want to apply, if any of you want to go to an international university, you can't just show up to Harvard and say, hello, I'm here, accept me. No, you have to apply for that. You have to investigate the requirements for that as well. There's a lot of work that you have to do beforehand. And so I recommend do think one step ahead. What do you want to do in this next year? And then what do you need to do now to prepare you for that? Okay. Next is say yes to opportunities. So sometimes things will come up that you did not expect, and they don't always fit into a narrow definition of a plan. I recommend saying yes to those things. As long as you are able to do them, and as long as you're interested in them, say yes. You don't know where they're going to lead. Worst case scenario, you don't like it. Now you have experience and you're able to grow in a different way, right? But always say yes to opportunities as long as you're able to do them, okay? Now, there are some things that you need to consider in this. First off, this strategy works very well if you are one person. If you have other people in your life that you're responsible for, you do have to consider them as well. You can't just say, we're not doing anything today, we're not planning anything, and just expect everybody to get along with the ride, yeah? You might have this mindset, not everybody does. If you have people in life that you're responsible for, you need to consider them in these plans, right? You also need to recognize that as you get older, you are going to narrow your path just a little bit. So for example, when I was 18, I had every job in the world that I could possibly become, yeah? You had so many possibilities. Once I graduated with a degree in economics, that field narrowed a little bit more. I probably was not going to become an engineer, probably was not going to become a doctor, right? And then after I did my master's degree, it narrowed even more. My master's degree was focused on education. And so in that case, probably I'm not going to become a fighter pilot. Probably I'm not going to become an astronaut. And that's okay. You have to understand that with every decision that you make and with every path that you take, there are trade-offs. And that's okay, as long as you understand and accept those. And lastly, if you know that you have a very strong goal, then you do need to research those requirements and plan ahead for that. For example, if you know with 100% certainty that you want to become a doctor, well, you can't just show up one day in the operating room and say, okay, I'm ready. No, you have to plan out, you have to study hard, you have to get accepted to medical school. So if you know for sure that you have a goal like that, then yeah, you do have to plan out just a little bit. Okay. All right, and before I leave, I do want to say one more thing. In English, we have a saying. We say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. The idea is that life is so much more beautiful, so much more complicated than we could ever predict or imagine. And plans can be a good tool to help us navigate, but they can also limit us in ways that prevent us from understanding and accepting the beauty of the opportunities that are in front of us today. Thank you, guys.